A young reporter thought he could humiliate Clint Eastwood, but he never saw this comeback coming. The ballroom of the Grand Palace Hotel was a showcase of luxury. The chandeliers cast a warm glow over the room, their light dancing off silver-framed walls. The scent of artisanal gin, high-end perfumes, and the underlying tension of Hollywood's finest filled the space. Guests in sleek suits and dazzling dresses moved from group to group, their hushed tones filled with whispers of movie magic, feigned laughter, and subtle digs. Some were there to support the evening's cause, a fundraiser for environmental conservation. But for many, it was merely another chance to be seen, to network, to climb the ladder of the entertainment world. The decor was a blend of modern opulence and classic elegance, with plush velvet drapes framing panoramic windows that overlooked the city's skyline. The walls were adorned with vintage film posters and modern art installations, a nod to the past and present of cinema. Waitstaff in crisp white uniforms glided through the crowd, offering champagne flutes filled with golden bubbles and trays of canapes that were almost too pretty to eat. The food was an amalgamation of global cuisines, each bite a testament to the creativity and diversity of the industry's palette. The music, a live orchestra playing a medley of film scores, added a layer of nostalgia to the evening, each note a reminder of the industry's rich history. From one corner, a jazz pianist played soft, haunting melodies, evoking memories of old Hollywood, while in another, a DJ mixed contemporary beats, symbolizing the fusion of eras. The dance floor, though sparsely populated, was waiting for the moment when the formalities would give way to celebration. The air was charged with the buzz of anticipation, not just for the gala's purpose, but for the encounters and exchanges that would define the night. And then Clint Eastwood walked in. No entourage, no fanfare, just him in a meticulously tailored black suit, hands casually in his pockets, radiating a quiet confidence that needed no introduction. At 94, his pace was measured, but there was an unmistakable presence in his stance, in the way his gaze swept the room. Conversations paused, eyes tracked his movement, and a few guests murmured to one another. He wasn't the kind of star you fawned over. He was respected, acknowledged. His hair, silver and neatly combed, added to his timeless appeal, his face a map of the films he'd made, the roles he'd embodied, the man behind the myth. He approached a group near the bar, shaking hands with old colleagues, his ear inclined to hear their stories above the soft, classical music. His presence wasn't just about his past achievements. It was about the stories he carried, the experiences that shaped an era of cinema. He wasn't one for small talk, but he had a way of making people feel significant, a rare gift in this crowd. His laughter was deep, resonant, as if it came from a place of genuine connection rather than social obligation. He engaged with a documentary filmmaker about the authenticity of storytelling, with an actor about the craft of performance, his insights like old wine, rich and complex. Across the grand space, a young journalist named Drew Mitchell was observing. Not yet a household name, but in the sphere of indie film critique, he was carving a niche as a fearless, no-holds-barred commentator. His blog posts, often lambasting the old guard of cinema, had garnered him a notable following online. With his sharp wit and even sharper critiques, he'd become known for his willingness to challenge the status quo. His hair was fashionably disheveled, his attire a deliberate mix of casual and chic, symbolizing his position as an outsider looking in. Tonight, he saw his opportunity. Clint Eastwood, to him, was emblematic of an outdated Hollywood. Mitchell was ready to make his mark, his expression a blend of cockiness and eagerness, already picturing how this encounter would unfold. He wasn't here for a debate. He was here for a showdown, oblivious to the caliber of his adversary. Drew adjusted his tie, phone in hand set to record, and maneuvered through the crowd with an overconfidence that bordered on arrogance. This wasn't just about critiquing old ideas. It was about creating a spectacle, about generating clicks and shares, about crafting his own narrative in the story of Hollywood. As he approached, the vibe around the bar subtly changed. A few attendees took a step back, sensing the brewing tension. Eastwood, in the midst of a story about his days as a director, about the struggles and triumphs, barely acknowledged the young reporter's presence, which only fueled Mitchell's determination. He cleared his throat, offering a strained smile. Mr. Eastwood, he said, his voice projecting to catch attention. Drew Mitchell from Filmfront. May I ask you a few questions? Eastwood gave him a fleeting look, unreadable and brief, then turned back to his conversation. Mitchell inched closer. I'll make it quick, he chuckled awkwardly. Just wanted your perspective on the shifting sands of cinema, you know? You've been around for over 60 years. Do you think there's still room for people like you? The insinuation was deliberate. The words people like you hung heavy in the air, laced with a challenge. A few guests nearby shifted their focus. One dropped a fork with a clatter. Even the bartender, in the act of pouring, paused momentarily, intrigued by the exchange. The room seemed to hold its breath, the background chatter fading into a mere whisper. Clint Eastwood turned to face him, his gaze steady like someone considering the worth of his time. Mitchell pressed on. Because you see, the film world is evolving. The old-school ethos, the traditional narratives. He made a dismissive gesture, one that suggested all of Eastwood's contributions might be relics of a bygone era. A lot feel it's time to move past that maybe your generation's out of touch with what viewers want now. There it was, the line Mitchell had rehearsed. He was set up perfectly, on camera before an audience, facing off with a legend. This was his moment. He could already envision the headline, Clint Eastwood confronted, witness his struggle with modernity. But that headline was about to collapse because Clint Eastwood was not the one struggling. A silence fell upon the room, the kind that makes every breath audible, every heartbeat a drum. Eastwood's eyes didn't waver. They were not those of a man offended or flustered, but of one who had seen this play before. He took a moment, then sighed, not from tiredness, but from a place of disinterest in the theatrics. He reached for his drink, took a slow sip, and set it down with a soft thud that echoed like a gavel in the quiet room before speaking. You've rehearsed that, haven't you? A ripple of laughter spread through the small crowd that had gathered. Not loud, but unmistakable. Mitchell's jaw clenched, but he maintained his facade. I'm just asking what people want to know, he shot back. People, Eastwood echoed, tasting the word as if it were a foreign concept. Or just you. Caught off guard, Mitchell paused. This wasn't part of his script. Eastwood leaned in slightly, resting an arm on the bar. You think the film industry just moves forward because some critic with a blog says so? That innovation comes from dismissing the past? Mitchell opened his mouth, but Eastwood didn't give him the chance. Let me tell you something, young man. His voice was calm, measured, the same tone that had delivered iconic lines in countless films. You don't erase history just because it doesn't fit your narrative. You learn from it, you evolve it, you take the best, fix the worst, and then you move forward. That's how you progress, not with this. He mimicked Mitchell's dismissive gesture. The laughter was louder this time, accompanied by a few claps. Mitchell's face reddened with embarrassment, yet he wasn't ready to back down. With all due respect, Mr. Eastwood, he said, his voice lacking its earlier edge. It's easy for you to talk about learning from history when you've had it easier. A murmur of dissent passed through the room, not in Mitchell's favor. Eastwood chuckled, shaking his head. Easier? I started in this business when they made us change our names because they were too rough. I was laying bricks in the heat before my first screen test. You think that was easy? He paused, letting his words sink in. Ever had to work in the sun just to pay for your next meal? Mitchell was silent, unprepared for this response. But Eastwood wasn't finished. I've seen your type before, he said, taking another sip from his drink. Looking for that moment to go viral. But you came here expecting me to crumble, to get angry, to stumble. That's not how I operate. That's your game. The room laughed again, the support clearly for Eastwood. Mitchell realized his plan had backfired, his moment of glory turning into a lesson in humility. Yet he tried one last time. Maybe it's time for new voices, new stories, not just the old ones. Eastwood nodded slowly. So give us one then. Tell us a story that will resonate more than all my films combined. Mitchell had no answer, his bravado gone. The silence was his defeat. You thought so, Eastwood concluded, returning to his drink. The crowd's laughter was now one of finality. Mitchell had lost not just the argument, but his audience's respect. As Mitchell retreated into the anonymity of the crowd, his confidence shattered. Eastwood turned back to his previous conversation, the incident already behind him. The night continued with its usual rhythms, but the lesson was clear. Wisdom over arrogance, experience over hubris. In Hollywood, some voices don't fade. They only grow stronger with time. Later, as the gala transitioned into a more relaxed affair, stories of the encounter spread. Some guests discussed the exchange with admiration for Eastwood's composure, others with pity for Mitchell's misstep. A seasoned actress shared with a group of young talents how such moments are tests of character, not just for the person challenged but for everyone watching. Meanwhile, a screenwriter, inspired by Eastwood's words, scribbled notes for a new script, understanding now the value of respecting the past while innovating for the future. And as the night drew to a close, with the stars of both screen and sky twinkling above, the lesson of the evening lingered like the last notes of the orchestra. Hollywood might be about the new, the now, the next big thing, but it's also about the timeless, the enduring, the legends like Clint Eastwood, whose stories continue to shape the industry's narrative, teaching us that in the clash of generations, wisdom often holds the upper hand.